In this video, we're going to be talking about the if conditional in JavaScript. Now, conditionals are used to add dynamic behavior to your code, and that's why they're very important. So let's see how they work. First, we'll talk about the most common type of conditionals, the if conditional. Now, the if conditionals or the if statements can be used to run a block of code only when a condition is true. So, only if a predefined condition is true, only and only then the code inside the if block will run. Otherwise, the code will not run. So let's see an example. So first, we define the if block and the condition, and we do that using the if keyword. The if keyword is how we start the if block. So first we type in if, and then inside parentheses is where we define the condition. So in order for the code inside the if block to be executed, the condition inside this pair of parentheses must return true. So if the condition inside the pair of parentheses returns true, the code will be executed. Otherwise, the code will not be executed. So in this case, the condition is very simple. The condition is 2 is less than 5, which we know is true. And then we start the curly braces. And then inside the pair of curly braces is where we add the code that we want to epoch. So in this case, the code is simply logging to the console 2 is smaller than 5. So console.log the string 2 is smaller than 5. And then we put in the ending pair of curly braces. And all this together creates an if conditional block. So how does this work? Well, when JavaScript encounters the if conditional, it'll first execute the expression inside the parentheses. So inside the parentheses, we have 2 is less than 5. Then it'll convert it into a boolean. So in this case, 2 is less than 5 will return true because it is true, right? We're using the less than comparison operator inside the if block. So this condition will return true. And thus, the code inside the block, which is the code inside the pair of curly braces, will execute. And the result in this case will be the string 2 is smaller than 5 is logged to the console. So the code inside the curly braces did execute, and that was because the condition inside the parentheses was true. If the condition had been false, this code would not execute. This is how you use if blocks and conditionals in JavaScript. You're telling JavaScript to execute some code if and only if a certain condition is true. If that condition is true, that code will get executed. Otherwise, it won't. And as for the condition inside the if block, this is where you can use all the comparison operators and the logical operators we learned in the previous video. Now let's take a look at another if block. So in this case, we're starting the statement again with if, and then inside the parentheses, we're defining the condition. In this case, the condition is 7 is less than 5. Now we know that 7 is not less than 5, 7 is greater than 5. So this condition will return false. But we'll go ahead with the if block anyways, and let's see what happens. In this case, we have another statement inside the curly braces, which logs to the console 7 is smaller than 5. So console.log the string 7 is smaller than 5. And then we end the pair of curly braces. However, because the condition inside the if block is not true, this code is never executed. So if you run this code, nothing will be logged to the console, because the code inside the pair of curly braces, which logs to the console, it's never executed. The code is there inside the JavaScript file, but it's never executed. Why? Because the condition inside the if block did not return true. It returned false. Because as we know from the previous video, 7 is less than 5 will return false. And that's what it did. The condition inside the parentheses returned false. And that's why the code inside the curly braces was not executed. Now do note that we're using console.log inside the pair of curly braces just for demonstration purposes. You can run almost any type of code in there, anything you want. We'll see more examples in just a minute. Okay, now let's step things up a little. Let's define a variable, variable x, and give it the value, the number 9. So var x equals 9. And then we can use some more comparison operators that we learned in the previous video. For example, the strict equality operator. Now, if you remember from the previous video, the strict equality operator returns true only if the two values are the same and the two valued data types are the same as well. So in this case, we're defining if, and then inside the parentheses, we're saying x is strictly equal to 9. And then we're starting the pair of curly braces. And inside the curly braces, we're logging to the console the string x is 9. So console.log x is 9. And then we end the pair of curly braces. And the result of this code is we get the string x is 9 logged to the console. So how does this work? Well, we have a variable x which has a value 9. So x is equal to 9. And then inside the parentheses, we define the condition. The condition is x must strictly be equal to 9. Now, because x is equal to the number 9, then x is strictly equal to 9 returns true. And because the condition inside the parentheses returns true, the code inside the if block, that is the code inside the curly braces, is executed. And that's why we get the string logged to the console. However, if x had a different value, anything other than 9, then x is strictly equal to 9 would return false, and the string would not be logged to the console. Now let's see some more examples. So here we define another variable, var fruit, which equals the string banana, okay? Okay, now we're defining our if block, and the condition is fruit is strictly equal to apple. And then inside the pair of curly braces, we are logging a string to the console. And then we end the pair of curly braces. Now this string is never logged to the console. This code is not executed. Why? Because fruit is equal to banana. So fruit is not strictly equal to apple. So the condition inside the if block, that is the condition inside the parentheses, which says fruit is strictly equal to apple, returns false, because fruit is strictly equal to banana, not apple. So fruit is strictly equal to apple returns false, and that's why the code inside the curly braces, which is the code inside the if block, does not run. So console.log code never runs, and we don't get any string logged to the console. But if fruit was equal to apple, then fruit is strictly equal to apple would return true, and we would get the string I love apples logged to the console. Now, one good thing about JavaScript code is that it's often human readable and intuitively understandable. So if you're still confused, you can almost read the if block such as if fruit is strictly equal to apple, then log to the console I love apples, right? It's almost in a human readable form. We have a pair of parentheses and curly braces, but you can almost read this JavaScript code as if fruit is strictly equal to the string apple, then log to the console I love apples. And that's how the if statement works.